Hey guys, welcome to Bastion Time. I am your host Bastion. This is Nintendo News. Let's get to that news, and this whole video is going to be almost like a rant, but not really. A clarification video, at least from my perspective, my opinion. So the news story that's nestled in this is Mr. Iwata was asked in an interview about many things, but one of the things was, hey, what about that live-action Zelda series that Netflix is developing with you? And he had a response which... We'll get to his actual response in a bit, but the way people interpreted his response was, no, there's no live-action Zelda series coming out on Netflix. Again, that is not what he said. We'll get to exactly what he said in just a second, but the gaming journalism out there, and I have to specify gaming journalism because the way gaming journalism runs with stories is a bit different than the way regular journalism runs with stories, and we'll get to that at the end. But the way gaming journalism ran with this was that thing was just a rumor. It's not happening. And that is not what Mr. Iwata said. Mr. Iwata had two very interesting statements, two very interesting sentences, or one sentence, but with two completely different ideas, and let's dive in, let's unpack those. So first of all, what he said was a bit of a caveat. He said, as of now, I have nothing new to reveal to you with regard to the use of any of our IPs in film or television. Okay, well, we'll analyze that a bit in a second. But then he goes on to say, but I can at least confirm that the article in question is not based on correct information. Let's take a look at that second part really quickly. A lot of people are taking that second part to say, oh, well then it was a rumor. It's not based on correct information. That is a big generalization of what he said. And to make it even more clear how much of a generalization that is and why that second part could be very misleading, let's take a look at the first part where he says, as of now, I have nothing new to tell you about live-action Zelda. And the reason why he's made this caveat is this is typical Nintendo sort of damage control. You would think that if there was absolutely no live-action Zelda series being developed by Netflix, he would just say, that's just a rumor, that's just false, that there is no live-action Zelda series. But he didn't say that. What he said was, as of now, he has nothing new to announce. Well, that's because Nintendo does not ever want to announce anything. They don't ever want to react to a leak, basically, which is what this thing would have been, until they are ready to come forward. Majora's Mask 3D, for instance. Tons of journalists were asking them for the past couple of years, hey, what about Majora's Mask 3D? Will that ever come out? And they always came back, Mr. Iwata, Mr. Aonuma, Mr. Miyamoto. The response was always, as of now, we have nothing new to say about the possibility of a Majora's Mask 3D game. What we eventually learned was, during that whole time, they were making Majora's Mask 3D. So they could have, if they wanted to, said, yeah, we're making it right now, but that is not Nintendo's way. They do not want to reveal or release information about something that's in development until almost near the end of its development, until they are basically 100% happy with what they will be showing us. So once they have something solid that they were going to show us, then they announce it. This kind of situation, where somehow this got leaked to this Wall Street journalist, at least that's how I'm interpreting it, they're absolutely not going to say, oh yeah, there's a live-action Zelda series, because it's in its infancy. It hasn't even, as of the Wall Street Journal, didn't even have a script. Any writers? There's no scripts because there were no writers. It was just at the beginning stages of being in development, according to that Wall Street Journal article. So, of course Nintendo is not going to acknowledge that as... They're not going to say, yeah, that's what's happening. They're always going to say, as of now, we have nothing new to say about that possibility. That's just the way they do things. So, could it be possible that Nintendo... Could it be possible that that second part where he says, well, let's analyze that second part too. So again, a lot of people are taking that second part to mean it was all a rumor, it was all fake. Not necessarily, because what that second part says is, he says that article in question is not based on correct information. That can mean a lot of things. That could mean either the whole entire article was incorrect, but not necessarily. It could also mean that several pieces of information in that article is not correct, because he's saying that information in that article is not, that article in question is not based on correct information. And there were several wildly speculative things in the article. Besides there's a possibility of a live-action Zelda series being developed by Netflix, there was also weird things in there that sounded speculative, like it's based on, it's a family-friendly Game of Thrones is one that jumps out to me. That could be something that Mr. Iwata is like, that's not how I would describe it, and I wouldn't want Nintendo fans thinking that it's going to be like Game of Thrones, because there are probably not going to be beheadings, probably not gratuitous violence and sex and all that kind of stuff, so he probably wants to squash that in any way he can. And then there were other things like about how, oh, it's based on Link and Zelda and Ganon and all this stuff. You know, it's possible that, yes, there is a live-action Zelda series being developed by Netflix, but that other information in that article about it being a family-friendly Game of Thrones, that is not correct information. So the article is not based on correct information. Not 100%. That's how I'm interpreting it. Could it be possible that the entire thing is bunk? I suppose that's possible, but it is not likely, and I'll explain why. Again, this is coming from the Wall Street Journal, and if you know anything about journalism, you'll know that in journalism, not necessarily gaming journalism, but in journalism, you can't just take one source and go with it. You have to back it up. You have to verify with a second source. The Wall Street Journal is a prestigious publication. I can't imagine that they overlooked that practice. They can't have possibly just had some Joe Schmo who was not at all affiliated with Netflix, not at all affiliated with the project, come to them and say, hey, I heard from so-and-so, I heard out there that there's this thing being in development. That's not possible. They wouldn't just run with some random guy who they could not verify was actually a Netflix, production employee or whatever. They just don't work like that. Journalism doesn't work like that. Certain Zelda fan sites work like that. For certain Zelda fan sites, you could send in any old email rumor saying, hey, I heard that in the next Zelda game, Link is going to look exactly like Danny DeVito, and they will publish that. But that's not real journalism. That's not the Wall Street Journal. So is it possible that the entire thing is 100% false? I say no. I say that it's probably just a case of Nintendo being typical Nintendo and not being ready to announce anything, and there's this leak out there, so their typical response always, every single time, is, as of now, we have nothing new, blah blah blah. That's just the way Nintendo is. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. See you guys tomorrow for more news. Bye, guys.